The inroads of Chinese trains on the European market, a diplomatic spat between Germany and Turkey over who owns the kebab, a thriving Siemens amidst Germany's economic crisis, and what does AI think of the EU and European politics in our paper of the week. These are 4 news stories that we need to talk about in Last Week in Europe. So, on a quick side note, I don't live under a rock and I know that Trump won the 2024 US presidential election. And that will be a topic for the coming weeks as more European leaders confront what that actually means. But until they actually react, anything we say is purely speculation, based on old narratives of the threat he poses to the transatlantic order or democracy and how Europe needs strategic autonomy. And while that might get me clicks and views, I would rather wait until there's something more substantial to talk about before I cover the subject. You can watch the projected impact of Trump's tariffs in last week's episode. So that being said, let's move on to our first story, where we'll look into how Chinese trains are making ground in Europe. Passenger trains manufactured in China by state-owned company CRRC Corporation Limited, where the world's largest railway manufacturer, have started transporting passengers in the EU for the first time. Their trains, called Sears, were ordered by Leo Express, a private Czech railway company. However, Leo Express cancelled their order 3 years later. It took the company too long to deliver, and crucially, their passenger trains didn't have certificates to operate in the European market. Obtaining EU certification is the company's long-cherished goal. It would enable the company to finally make inroads into the European Union's market, something that no Chinese passenger train has yet obtained. Although the order was cancelled, CRC rented out 3 already built trains to the Czech rail provider RegioJet for free trials. After these trials, RegioJet leased the trains for 5 years with a temporary permit to operate in Europe. So despite its efforts over many years, CRC has just 3 passenger trains operating in Europe so far. Although this doesn't look like a success story for the Chinese manufacturer, it's just one of their efforts to make inroads into the European market. They already have multiple types of freight trains that are running large scale in Germany, Austria, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Serbia, and North Macedonia. And for passenger trains, CRRC is set to supply more and more European countries. In March, it struck a deal to export double-decker trains to Austria, which will also run in Germany and Hungary. Most importantly, CRRC struck a deal with a Hungarian equity fund, Asimil, in September to set up a new railcar plant in Hungary. The deal followed after Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Hungary in May. The project's main goal is to increase sales in Europe. It's also likely that these local manufacturers would help avoid EU countermeasures. But in February, the European Commission dealt a blow to CRRC's European ambitions. The Commission opened an investigation into foreign subsidies after the Chinese manufacturer participated in a Bulgarian tender for electric trains. The Commission found sufficient evidence that CRRC had obtained a foreign subsidy that gave it an unfair advantage. It was the first company to be struck by tougher EU rules against foreign subsidies, leading it to withdraw from the tender. But despite the setback, the company is set to keep pushing for EU certification. And once they've obtained it, the competition is set to be tough for European manufacturers. Because 3 Chinese manufacturers distribute almost all the Chinese infrastructure market, they have profited enormously from the growth of the Chinese railway market. This, combined with state subsidies, allowed CRRC to develop new technologies and high-quality electric trains, which they all sell at a low price. And their competition comes at a time for high demand for new rail cars in Europe. The average age of railway vehicles in Europe exceeds 40 years, so there is need for large-scale modernization as well as electrification. Experts estimate that more than 100,000 of the 500,000 rail cars in operation in Europe will need to be replaced. But today, European factories can only produce 6,000 to 8,000 new rail cars annually. In short, we might see a lot more Chinese trains throughout Europe in the coming years. In our next story, Germany and Turkey are fighting over perhaps Europe's most beloved fast food, the doner kebab. The question is, who owns the meat typically served on bread throughout Europe? In April, the International Federation of Doner Producers based in Turkey filed a request to the European Commission to recognize doner kebab as a traditional specialty guaranteed product. This official EU status aimed to guarantee the quality and unique features of such a product. It's like intellectual property rights for food and drinks with a specific EU law setting the rules. Other examples include protected Spanish Serrano ham, Neapolitan pizza, or French champagne. If you're European, your region likely has a similar protected product. Germany's Food and Agriculture Minister, Cem Özdemir, whose parents are Turkish immigrants, quickly objected to the Turkish application. The doner belongs to Germany. We don't need specifications from Ankara on how to prepare and eat it. The 2 countries are in fact fighting over what the doner actually is. The Turkish request to the EU is full of detailed criteria on how doner kebab should be prepared, such as the size of meat strips, the exact proportions of spices, as well as the length of the knife. Meat that's not prepared following these exact criteria could no longer be named and sold as döner. If Germany's objections are upheld, Brussels will invite both parties from Germany and Turkey to negotiate talks. The delegations are expected to be given 6 months to reach an agreement. And yes, you can picture 20 officials facing each other in a dark Brussels room discussing the official status of the döner. This week's economic topic is a positive story, which we don't see in Europe's economic news too often. Last week, German engineering giant Siemens bought the American firm Altair, a software provider in AI-driven industrial simulation and analysis market, for around 10 billion euros. While Germany's industry is struggling, as recently highlighted by Volkswagen's plans to reduce wages, another German industrial giant in Siemens is buying American companies, instead of the usual other way around. Perhaps Europe's industry can learn something from Siemens' strategy and evolution. Most consumers likely know Siemens for its home appliances and electronics, such as washing machines or medical devices. But over the last 15 years, Siemens has quietly become a leader in industrial software and the world's biggest company in automation technology. The revenues from this digital industry segment rose by 12% in 2023. And with its acquisition of Altair, Siemens is further strengthening its dominance in industrial software and AI for manufacturing. Not too bad for a European company. So does Siemens' strategy hold a lesson for Europe's industry? Like most other industrial giants, it rose to dominance by manufacturing high-quality products. But lower-cost global competition and increasing energy prices have made it difficult to maintain its position. To survive, Siemens invested heavily in innovation and steadily expanded into the digital and software sector. In other words, Siemens has successfully shifted from grease to code, as Forrester Research calls it. This brings us to the most important point: Siemens' focus on innovation and digitalization, two things that Germany's economy and industry are not particularly well known for. In its report on Germany's innovation policy, the OECD criticized the country's lack of digitalization, a crucial shortcoming as its industries are being reshaped. One major caveat of this story is that Siemens is able to invest billions and to buy other companies simply because it is an industrial giant with billions in revenue. There aren't too many European companies that can put up the billions that Siemens can. But it's proof that European companies can be competitive. And finally, for our paper of the week, we have the work of David Rosado, a researcher at the Otago University in New Zealand, into the political biases of artificial intelligence. With the replacement of search engines, but also websites like Wikipedia as the main source of information to people, it's crucial to understand the biases of AI. Rosado previously published work on the left-of-center biases of AI language models in general. And in a recent publication for the Center for Policy Studies, a British think tank, he went into the biases specifically for different European countries. Rosado asked 24 different AI language models about policy recommendations, information on the most popular left and right political parties, information on various mainstream political ideologies, and about radical and extreme ideologies on both left and right. He found that the policy recommendations to European leaders were mostly left-leaning, advocating for rent control, social housing, increasing the minimum wage, or expanding legal channels for immigration. When it came to political leaders, there were some noticeable results, with right-wing leaders in Spain, Hungary, or Italy having a bad rap. When it came to right-wing political parties and ideology, the AI was overwhelmingly positive on left-wing political parties, and much less so on right-wing parties. And finally, when it came to extreme ideology, AI was negative on the far right and positive on the far left. It's something you need to think about the next time you let AI write your next paper or script for a YouTube video or ask who you should vote in an election. And that was our fourth and final story for this third episode of Last Week in Europe. It's a new format that I'm currently trying out, which won't replace the deep dives that I currently do and enjoy. But since they're becoming longer and taking up more time, this new format will allow me to cover more ground and keep you up to date on the future of Europe. And if you like this format and would like to support Into Europe, for the past couple of months, I've been trying to raise 700 euros in order to be able to afford a recording studio and improve the audio and video quality of my videos.